Retroality TV presents Reimagine That with Chris Mann, offering refreshing reality with a retro twist. Our special guest this week is everyone's favorite prairie mean girl, actress Alison Arngrim. Plus, Chris shares some thoughts on the untimely passing of legendary singer Whitney Houston. And we'll explore lucid dreaming with our very own dreamweaver, Yvonne Riva. And now, introducing your host, Chris Mann.
Thank you, Linda Kay, our vintage-voiced announcer and producer. And hi again, all of you. It is February 17th, and welcome to episode 7, lucky 7, of Reimagine That, the podcast where retro pop meets forward thought. This is the podcast extension of my website, retroality.tv. Happy belated Valentine's Day, or early Arbor Day. Take your pick. You know, we like to keep it, for the most part, light and fun and funny here. And our guest last Friday, actor Bronson Pinchot, did all three of those things magnificently. Thank you again, Mr. Pinchot. Love that guy. This week, we have another hilarious celebrity with us, Alison Arngrim from Little House on the Prairie. More on her in a bit. But, you know, the comic relief last Friday from TV's Balky Bartokomous, leading up to the premiere of his new DIY show last Saturday, the Bronson Pinchot Project. Sadly, all of that hilarity was seriously tempered last Saturday with news of the shocking, if not surprising, death of pop icon Whitney Houston. Such a sad, senseless death of yet another one of our pop icons who inspired so much joy and song in us. More on Whitney here shortly. Last Saturday, I was looking online. Someone had sent me a link to a spoof that Ease the Soup had done on the Joyce DeWitt-Suzanne Summers reunion. Pretty funny stuff at times, laugh out loud funny at the end, with the actresses playing Joyce and Suzanne, and then someone as Jenny Lee Harrison coming in to take over the show. And I'm laughing out loud at this, and then in the next breath, I find out that Whitney Houston has passed the day before the Grammys. And like so many, I was just left breathless, a different kind of breathless that we were all left back in her heyday in the mid to late 80s and the early to mid 90s especially. You know, Whitney really was the voice of a generation, literally the voice. Her majestic voice just left me stunned back in the day, particularly her rendition of I Will Always Love You, the Dolly Parton hit that Whitney somehow managed to make her own in The Bodyguard. And I immediately thought back to 92, 93 when The Bodyguard was all the rage. I was editor of the student newspaper. That was my junior year at the University of Tulsa. And we used to impersonate comically Whitney Houston. We would sit down in this chair in the newsroom with our legs sort of out like she was in the Bodyguard video, sort of leaning down, and then all of a sudden we would raise our heads up when she would go, and yeah. I won't sing anymore. I will spare you that. But that immediately came to mind, and what an impression this woman left on the culture. For me to remember that so vividly, that place and time, is just testament to the effect that she had on my generation, certainly, and many, many more, older and younger than I. By 1992, Whitney had, without a doubt, found her voice, in part through that song, through that soundtrack, certainly. And sadly, she would lose her voice over the next 20 years, literally lose her voice due to the effects of drugs, and now lose her life. So in tribute to Miss Houston's powerful vocal legacy, particularly that of her heyday in the 80s and 90s, before she tragically lost her voice to personal demons. Our theme this week is about finding your voice, and in doing so, finding your power. And when you find your voice, and you hone it, and you honor it, and you live your dream, and you follow your passion, and you don't give your energy, your creative wellspring over to external influences, if you can stay true to that voice, then you know what? You're on the right path. And so in honor of Whitney in her heyday, I wanted to sort of make that the theme. And it works out really perfectly because our special guest this week and next is actress turned activist turned best-selling author Alison Arngrim. That's some alliteration for you. She epitomizes this theme, this transformational triumph of finding your voice, in her case, in adversity, triumphing, and using that voice to make a difference, not only in her life, but in others. In 2010, she published her best-selling biography, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, How I Survived Nellie Oleson and Learned to Love Being Hated. The book was released last year in paperback and also in French. Alison has a huge following in France. In the book, she reveals how actually giving life to a demon child, her little house creation, Nasty Nellie Oleson, gave her an outlet from childhood abuse, sexual abuse that she was experiencing as a preteen at the hands of a family member. And this character not only gave her an outlet, it also gave her an opportunity to find her voice and her power as a survivor and ultimately as a victim's right advocate and legal reformer. So in an era when it seems like all of our childhood idols and pop icons are succumbing to addiction, succumbing to personal demons around the age of 50, it's refreshing to hear from someone who not only survived fame and Hollywood and the ups and the downs and all of that to make it to 50, which Alison recently did, happy birthday, but to thrive and to use that childhood adversity to become stronger and being so cognizant at such a young age of the concepts of accountability and being on top of your game and appreciating an opportunity that comes to you. She was ahead of the game here, and she not only survived, but she thrived. So we tip our hat to you, Alison. So she has found and she exercises her voice in a time when the lid is really being lifted off of this scary, sad reality of child abuse, sexual abuse of minors, of children. It's so disturbing, and she's been leading the way in changing the law through her organization that she's so closely affiliated with, protect.org, which she will talk about here shortly. She sounds off on some of the current and ongoing news, including this terrible news of sexual abuse in the LA school district of young children. It's beyond words that this stuff exists. I will leave it up to Alison to articulate this dark reality and the light at the end of the tunnel that she's helping people see, because she has such a grasp of the situation and such a gift for putting into words what is wrong and how she is fighting to right those wrongs. She also talks about pedophilia in Hollywood and what was experienced by the two Coreys of the 1980s, the late Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. Corey Haim, I believe Corey Feldman has said, ultimately succumbed to the childhood sexual abuse that eventually turned into addiction, and his demons really got him. Fortunately, for every Corey Haim, there is a survivor, and Alison is one of those, and she will share her journey there. And fortunately for us, Alison's journey also took her down the road of comedy, beginning in the mid-1970s with Little House on the Prairie. Who didn't grow up watching that show and loving to hate Nellie Oleson and being scarred when Mary Ingalls woke up blind and watching the whole town succumb to the plague and all sorts of drama. Today, though, that show is a welcome escape. And Nellie was a healthy escape, ironically enough, for Alison. She infused her sense of humor, her comic timing into that character, and then spun that off into projects after the show as a stand-up comic, as a woman doing a one-woman show. I guess if you're going to do a one-woman show, you might as well be a woman. So she had that down. She had the comedy down too. And she has balanced the serious and the sobering statistics and stories that she shares with a wicked sense of humor. And on that note, let us join our chat with Alison Arngrim. Hi, Alison. How are you?
Well, I'm very good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to interview again. Your interview with me a couple years ago was one of my all-time favorites.
Oh, thank you.
You bet. And so welcome to my new podcast, Reimagine That. And in the last couple of years, you really have reimagined your life. You've had this best-selling book, which is now available in hardback, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, which is like the best title ever, by the way.
Thank you.
You bet. And you've done so many other things. But I have to say, right off the top, happy 50th birthday, belatedly.
Oh, thank you.
How was it?
It was very good. It was very good. Well, the book is now out in hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and in French.
Oh, my God.
And for my birthday, it also came out in shortbread cookie. A friend of mine in New York, Chip Duckadoo, booked my show into New York and Confessions of a Prairie Bitch and whatnot, called out this thing, cookie jars. This woman, Jennifer Maldonado out of New York, who she just got a huge plug there, but she's all over my Facebook now. And she makes these cookies, and she'll put anything on them. She paints in icing, just creates these fabulous big shortbread, delicious cookies, icing on them, and she does whatever theme you want. Well, she did a whole Little House theme.
Oh my God.
And not only did she do cookies with, Little House and Nellie saying stuff, she made one of my books. So I have this big cookie, and it's the cover of Confessions of a Prairie Bitch in icing. It is absolutely hysterical.
That is brilliant.
I sent it to my agent and said, yes, my cookie is now out in shortbread. And he's still good. I had so much trouble eating the hardcover edition.
Well, your book is delicious, and I want to ask you about some of that dish. But I got to ask first, was the Melissa Sue Anderson cookie still a little bitter?
There were, thank heavens, no Melissa Sue Anderson cookies. Because, we'd have just said, probably poison, too dangerous to eat.
We'll put that one over to the side for a minute. Well, that is amazing. Your book has been quite the phenomenon here and in France, and it grew out of your stage show and your stand-up history, which I want to ask you about all of this and also your work as an activist. But a little dish from your book first, because it has been this well-received, well-reviewed across-the-board book.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the Melissa Sue, I got to ask you something here. I don't know if you've heard, but Three's Company stars Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers recently met and buried the hatchet for the first time in like 31 years.
God, that's awesome.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I mean, if this is not a sign of the apocalypse, I don't know what is.
Right, we're all going to die now.
Right.
We're going to start talking.
But I mean, so this historic thing, but it's also been a bit historic that you ran into Melissa Sue for the first time in decades.
I went to her book signing, despite all of this long, ghastly relationship and all the things I said in my book, and her absolutely refusing to speak to me. I said, well, all right, Auntie Marian. You read my book. You read about my Auntie Marian, who is sort of just the moral compass for everything and always doing the right thing.
Yes.
She said, well, she always would try to get me to be nice to Melissa Sue, and she would have said, you must go to her book signing. If she was alive, she would have made me go to the book signing.
Yes.
So I got to go. I got to go to the book signing. And everyone was like, you're not seriously going to Melissa Sue Anderson's book signing? And I said, I know. No, did she come to mine? No. Did you go to Melissa Gilbert's? No. And I thought, no, I'm going to go to her book signing. And I called around, and no one else in the cast. I asked Melissa Gilbert. She said, are you crazy? You can't go to book signing. Are you out of your mind? I tried. Nobody, everybody else said, no, don't go. And I said, I'm going to go. And so I went, and my husband's like, okay, I'll go with you. And we bought her book, and we got there, and it was funny because there were some friends of hers and some friends of her husband there, and they all came up to me and said, oh, great, you're here. And then she's getting ready at the table, and I stayed in the back at first, and there were people there to interview her, and they interviewed me, and I was very supportive. I said, yes, you should collect all 3 books.
Yes.
And then she asked for audience participation. She does a really cute thing at her signings where she has people read from a script. And I stepped forward and raised my hand. Everyone in the room saw me do it. Everybody cracked up with, oh, my God, she's here. She just raised her hand. And Melissa Sue looked over my head as if I wasn't there and said, anyone? Anyone?
I didn't know that.
Seriously, I have it all on video. It's really embarrassing. And then we got in line and we got up for a picture, and she did. She signed my book. She was very polite. I introduced her to my husband. She said, hi. And I did post her pictures with her. I did not attempt to touch her or hug her or distress her in any way. We stood next to her very nicely, and we took several pictures. And I have all of this. It is all on video. And my friend who was shooting it, a very innocent, sweet person, said, oh, I'm surprised. What, no hug? I said, no hug. I said, I think we all should be very thankful she didn't just slap me across the face for showing up. So we did meet at her book signing. She was civil.
She would. Well, maybe she didn't see you stand up. You know what, with the blind thing and
everything. That she'd gone into character, and was indeed so blind she could not see me standing 3 feet from her. So yeah, she was not, shall we say, enthusiastic. She was civil. She was polite. But shall we say frosty?
Much like the cookies.
Like the cookies, but she tried.
She tried, but there was she didn't take you up on your offer for a pitcher of margaritas or anything.
No. And it wasn't, when I went to Melissa Gilbert's book signing, it was an absolute chaotic free-for-all. It's like, oh my God, you're here, and yelling and screaming and carrying on. And, most people would say, and I got a lot of mail after the event saying, someone you haven't seen him in like 18 years, because I think we last spoke at like Michael's funeral, you'd think you'd show up and they'd go, oh my God, you're here, or oh God, you're here. Either one.
Something.
Either hooray, you're here, surprise, or oh no, I can't believe you had the audacity to show up, surprise. Either way, I'm good. But there was no reaction. She said hello, as if she'd seen me yesterday.
Dispassionate.
Wasn't a big deal that I just showed up after 18 years. Did not faze her in the least.
Well, you know what? Maybe she will be inspired by the Joyce and Suzanne reunion, and you guys can have a picture of margaritas on YouTube, and then she'll open up. I think that's
Suzanne
what she needs.
Summers and Joyce DeWitt, that's big. I mean, if they're getting back together, I'm telling you.
It should inspire world peace.
Right? I mean, next Jennifer Aniston will be babysitting Brad and Angelina's kids if this keeps up.
Right, and that really will be a moment. Well, I had read that Melissa Sue had done like maybe her first Little House fan event with Dean Butler a year or so ago.
Yes, I think by accident.
Did the stagecoach crash again?
Wisconsin. She was booked into Wisconsin to promoting her book on her book tour. She had 6 or 7 dates, and Dean works all these events in Wisconsin. In fact, I'm going there this summer.
Yeah, Walnut Grove.
He indeed popped in, and so they did wind up there at the same time. I don't think that was totally, shall we say, planned, and I'm not sure how keen about that she was.
That there was someone else that she worked with that showed up?
Well, I think she thought she was going to be there by herself.
Ah, I see. Not a reunion.
And I don't think it was necessarily planned, hey, you two are doing this as a twofer. I think this was, oh, I am? Oh, I am. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you didn't see a whole bunch of stuff on their both Facebook pages going, we had such a good time together, It wasn't there. Now, I'm going to Wisconsin because I'm going everywhere. I'm in July. Well, let's see. Start with February. I mean, I'm heading back to France. All of March is in France, of course.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm all over the place. I'm even doing like a Comic Con in France, which would be wild. And then in June, I'm back in New York because the Laurie Beecham Theater, we love them. But July, there is an event called Laura-Palooza.
Laura-Palooza.
I love the name right there, the Laura-Palooza. And it's very literary focused. It's people who are big fans of the books and all things Laura.
Yes.
And I'm going to be at that they tried to get me last year. They got me this year it's around the weekend of the 13th, 14th of July.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to do the show there, in fact. And then the very next weekend, I'm in Walnut Grove, scene of the crime, as I call it. The real Walnut Grove.
The real
then
one.
I am going to Heritage Hills. I'm going to go to Green Bay, Wisconsin, which I believe is where Dean and Melissa Sue met up. So I'll get dirt when I'm there, I'm sure.
Well, we will be checking your Twitter and your Facebook and your Tumblr and everything. We'll Tumblr for you.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of touring, you've been very busy. You toured recently with another TV good girl, Mary McDonough, a.k.a. Erin Walton, the good girl and bad girl reunion. What was that? Like, what inspired that?
Well, Mary and I have been friends for years. One of the goodiest of good girls, little Erin Walton. Mary McDonough and I have been friends for years. It's kind of wonderful to see that people from the Waltons and people from Little House on the Prairie are actually friends with each other. And we do cross paths frequently. And Mary has these great Christmas parties, and you'll have Waltons people, a couple of Prairie people, and then she'll throw in a couple of Brady's just to drive everyone crazy. And so she hangs out with everybody. And Mary is awesome. Mary also does a lot of activism about warning people about the dangers of breast implants and also body image. She talks to a lot of teenage girls about what is it you think is pretty and why do you feel the need to starve yourself and do all these weird things.
Yeah.
And so she's really good about stuff like that. And we had been talking for years. And then, her book came out, which is Lessons from the Mountain. And it's all about growing up on the Waltons. And then her activism about the dangers of breast implants and body image and all this stuff. Great.
Yes.
So she and I, we did a couple interviews together. We got on the radio. We were so funny together. We made such a hilarious, bizarre team. And our books complemented each other and our personalities did. So we booked a thing we were at the Santa Monica Public Library together. And it was like a whole conversation where we interviewed each other, which was hilarious.
Oh, how fun.
And we asked each other really silly questions. I asked her about Little House on the Prairie, and she asked me about the Waltons, and neither of us knew any of the answers. And then we did questions from the audience, and it was a riot. People really liked it. So we're putting together a whole package. We're calling it From the Mountain to the Prairie, the eternal struggle between good and evil.
I love it.
And you can book the two of us to come and talk about our books, life in general, the Waltons, the Prairie, whatever you want.
I love
you can
it.
book us in your town. We're putting that out there because it was so much fun.
But there won't be any mud wrestling like Nellie and Laura.
That might be for an additional fee. We
After
will
the
have
show.
to charge extra for that.
Now, your book grew out of your stage show and your stand-up routine, but sitting down and writing this out and then sharing your revelations publicly, was that catharsis for you?
I had a lot of catharsis prior to the book coming out on a bunch of the issues because the stand-up act was really cathartic, I think, really in like 2002 when I started doing confessions, when I started turning my stand-up into a one-woman show and telling these true stories. To go up on stage and just start telling people the truth was just, whoa! It was so much fun. That was a real shock. And then I started working with Protect, the National Association of Protect Children.
Yes.
And I wound up going on Larry King and talking about having been abused. So I had talked about that with a therapist and with friends, and so it wasn't like I hadn't told anybody. I just hadn't gone public. And the changing of the law in California and in New York that I was able to do with Protect, where we actually altered the incest laws to better protect children.
Wow.
That was incredible to see change in a law that had previously had a loophole that had let thousands of predators go free. See that loophole closed. It was like, oh my God.
Incredible.
So that was a good feeling. And then to finally blurt it all out in the book and go, okay, here's what happened. Here's how my life was so bizarre that I couldn't possibly become anybody but Nellie Oleson. Who else would I have been cast as? And here's how Nellie Oleson has permanently, just irretrievably changed my life for better or worse.
Amazing.
And so this is what I've done with it. And it was really great to just explain it to people. Okay, here's what happened.
Yeah. It's so colorful and it's so poignant, your book and your story. And I want to try to touch on some of both, the poignant and the exciting and fun. On a serious note here, as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, how have you managed to find peace and forgiveness and just the general ability to move forward so boldly in your life?
Well, it does take a lot of work. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in therapy, and you also, it changes every day, and you have to know that it's going to, and you do have to make yourself, as it were, the star of your own life. I've talked about this for years about people who aren't even the stars in their own life. They're only an extra in the film that is their life. They put all these people above them, make them the stars, and that just does not work out in the long haul. You have to be, the person that you're following. You have to follow your own tweets, man. You have to follow yourself on Twitter and be your own friend on Facebook. One of the problems I have often also with the forgiveness model is the word forgiveness has been so hijacked.
Yes.
I mean, there is a spiritual quest for forgiveness that people pursue, But what most people mean by forgiveness is pretend it never happened.
That's right.
They go, oh, I forgave them, so now I'm not going to call the police now that I know they're molesting someone else.
That's
They've
right.
actually had people say stuff like this. People going, well, why didn't you turn in your grandpa now that he's, attacked half the town? Oh, well, we forgave him. Oh, poor bully for you. Now, of course, he's just raped 40 other people, but
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so that's terrible. And I mean, there's people who have forgiven people. Of course, the person's still in prison. They may bake them a cake and send them a Christmas card.
Right.
They may
right.
have forgiven him, but they went and testified against him and put him in jail.
That's right.
So, what you do with your forgiveness on your own time, sure, fine, but that doesn't make people not accountable for their actions.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't make anything okay, and it's also utterly optional. If that is your particular spiritual bailiwick, hey, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a terrible history of people trying to force people, especially children, to forgive their attackers. And usually what it is sadly, it's come from defense lawyers. You get a guy who's on trial for molesting a kid or even his own kid, and the lawyer is going to the prosecutor and the judge with is, don't give my guy too long a sentence. And one of the things he's going to come in and sell them is, it's okay, the victim and the family forgave him.
Wow.
So you don't want to give him the 20 years because the kid forgave him, so it's not so bad, so you can only give him the 2 years. And so they go and they pressure the bejesus out of that kid. Say you forgave him because we can tell that. And that has nothing to do with forgiveness or spirituality. That's just sick.
That's so manipulative and
right?
wrong.
And there's a lot of really unpleasant manipulation that goes on in pushing victims to forgive, which is just kind of twisted because, if you read about forgiveness in Christianity and the whole shebang, they talk about grace. Well, you can't very well make someone hand out grace. It doesn't work that way. So this whole thing of you must forgive is that's an oxymoron. That's like jumbo shrimp. You can't say you have to forgive.
That's right.
That's warped.
It's a very
personal. Yeah, if someone's telling you you should forgive someone, you should probably stop listening to that person and just
right.
And a lot of people who have been victims of abuse, especially women, we tend to internalize, and children tend to blame themselves. And if it's someone close to you who abused you, your first impulse is to go, "Oh no, they couldn't be that bad. It must have been some kind of accident." So you really tend to not get angry or to stuff your anger or avoid it. If a total stranger jumps you in the street, it's a lot easier to go, well, son of a bitch, and, hate the guy. But you have everything pushing against you to not hate them when it's a family friend, a relative, someone you know. It's like women who are beaten by their husbands. They're trying not to hate the guy, but really.
Right. And a victim who speaks up is often vilified for speaking up. How could you do this to the family?
Right. So if a woman speaks out about her husband beating her, it's like, well, we're rocking the boat, and they treat kids the same. Molesting your kids is where beating your wife was 40 years ago.
Yeah,
they're pulling the same stunts. And
absolutely.
So what most victims of sexual abuse as children really need is a good old-fashioned dose of go ahead and be angry more than, hey, you need to forgive.
That's right.
Hey, guess what? You don't have to, and you can say you hate them. It's really okay.
It is
perfectly fine.
Absolutely natural to have that reaction and to acknowledge it before you can move through to anything else. You have to acknowledge it.
They need to be not our responsibility. I mean, now as a victim, I've done a lot of stuff where I've made things my responsibility, where I've gone and fought entire state laws and gone into Washington, D.C. and gotten funding for law enforcement. So I've made a lot of things my responsibility. But as a victim, we tend to make our perpetrators our responsibility. Wives are trying to figure out what they can say nice to the guy to make him stop being a wife beater. They feel like it's their responsibility to get the guy who beat them into therapy and make his life okay. No, it's not.
Right, no.
Really stop hitting you in the face.
Absolutely.
And children do this with their sexual abusers, their predators, that it's their responsibility to make their father or their stepdad or their brother not sick anymore, or to see what he did wrong, or to figure it out. And then now the new form is it's your responsibility to put them in jail. Like, I'm the entire LAPD.
Right.
Corey Feldman is now speaking out about how many predators there are in Hollywood and how he and Corey Haim, so many people have been sexually abused in Hollywood. Absolutely true. Everything Corey Feldman says is true and worse. So here he's saying this, and some people say, well, he should have named their name. You're responsible. I said, well, first of all, if he names their names, they're going to go, did not, and they're going to try to sue him and scream defamation. He can name the names to the police or to an attorney who wishes to file a suit, and the police can get another victim to go wear a wire like they did with the manager manager, Marty Weiss, where people knew this was going on, but one of the victims came forward and he wore a wire and got Marty Weiss on tape confessing to everything. So then they can name the names. But he's, they're saying as if it is Corey Feldman as a victim's sole personal responsibility, like the Lone Ranger, to bring all of these rapists to justice.
Yeah, and of course, you mentioned sort of the culture of intimidation and manipulation with people who have been victimized. And then you add Hollywood on top of it. You've spoken out about this, and you've certainly been very involved with Protect.org. Why do you feel the lid has not been fully, or really even mostly, lifted off of Hollywood pedophilia? And when do you think that will happen?
I think it's this year. It's like, well, it took years. I mean, I knew about the Catholic priests years ago. Anyone who's ever been in a therapy group for incest or sexual abuse survivors was hearing about the priests years ago. And then it finally broke. And they caught a couple of priests and they started to rat each other out. And then all hell broke loose. And then teachers is also going to break. We're starting to see, there was a case in Los Angeles area with a teacher tying the kids up. It's just been arrested.
Oh, that's so horrible.
Yeah. And so and now it's coming out. He'd been doing stuff. It's been going on for years. And now it's coming out. People complained about him repeatedly 20 years ago, and nobody did anything.
God.
So that's going to break soon, and then Showbiz is breaking. They arrested Marty Weiss. They arrested that casting director guy. There started to be arrests, and Kane and Feldman and these people, I heard about this stuff years ago, but now people are talking about it. People are talking about predators in Hollywood and having sex abuse in Hollywood who never would have said a word about this 20 years ago. And someone like a Martin Weiss would have gone on his entire career sexually exploiting every one of his clients and never been caught. And now he's in the clink on like millions of dollars bail. So these kind of people go on and on. They are getting caught, and I'm thinking somebody's going to rat. They're going to arrest a few of these guys, and they're going to say, "I'll give you the other ones. Let me go, and I'll turn the others in." And that will be fun to watch.
Yes.
I'm sort of looking forward to that. Like, go ahead, rat them all out. I want to watch them all go to jail. As I said, it's great. Yes, victims should do their best to stand up right. And, if you're raped, you should report it, and absolutely. And if you're asked to testify, really the right thing to do is to suck it up and go to court and try to be brave and stand your ground. But it is not actually your personal and sole responsibility to put a predator in jail. The police department, the prosecutor, the judges, the legislators who make the laws, these people are all responsible for putting people in jail, too.
And juries.
In fact, in front of you.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works.
And so if I call the police, and I'm truthful, and I tell the police, this is what happened, I tell them, and they don't go arrest the guy, whose fault is that? Did I fail as a victim? And if the police arrest the guy and they do bring him in, and the prosecutor decides not to press charges, whose fault is that? Or he does, and then the judge says, I'm going to sentence you to community service, so your sentence is suspended, you're free to go. Then who screwed up?
Well, victims, and especially people who experienced this kind of abuse as a child, have enough on their shoulders as it is than to have this sort of implicit, or even not implicit, explicit sort of burden of, well, you have to see justice through and do all this yourself.
Everyone's got rules for victims. Nobody's talking about what these people who are raping children should and shouldn't be doing. Nobody's telling them, you really should stop raping these children. You should turn yourself in. There's never any messages to the predators. Lots of messages to the victims. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. Everybody wants to tell the victims what to do. Nobody's talking to the child molesters. And the victims keep being told what to do. And first they were told, well, you should forgive and you should forget about it and you should try to make peace with the guy and you should think that he's sick. And now they're saying, okay, that's wrong. But now they're saying, now you should hunt him down yourself and bring him to justice.
Vigilante.
Right. And somehow, no, you should do all the prosecutors and the detectives work for them.
For free, too,
like,
yes.
What? Wait, now we have a whole new burden of crap. And it's like, wait a minute. So my perpetrator isn't my job. I called the cops. I told everybody. I've told the lawyers. I've told the shrinks. I told Larry King. I told everybody in the book. There you go. I'm done.
Now you need to write an episode of SVU and star in it.
Right?
Change the entertainment industry. That your voice has gone a long way, and I know recently there was a piece on Huffington Post that referred to, the Protect.org crusaders as kind of pirates.
We are. Maybe. We are absolutely pirates. We'll make all child abusers walk the plank. Yes.
So yes, your voice has gone a long way. Can you give a little bit of direction to someone that may be listening that may say, where do I begin? Go to protect.org for resources, for guidance. Is that what you might recommend?
Absolutely. Well, protect.org will tell you what's going on politically in government, what laws have flaming loopholes in them, some of the disasters we're currently fighting. And you'll see some of our people who are speaking out for Protect, who are people who were abused as children. Alicia, for instance, we have Alicia's Law. This poor girl was kidnapped and assaulted, and it was unbelievable. And she's turned this whole thing around and is using this to speak out and get more funding for the type of law enforcement teams that are really responsible for the fact that she's still alive, saying, had these law enforcement, these ICAC teams, Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, if these people didn't exist and they hadn't had it together to go track this guy who had me, forget it, I'm dead. And so she's talking about this, and we're talking about these kind of programs where decisions made by your legislators at the state level and at the federal level, people at your state level, and state level people are easier for you to get at in your letter writing and phoning than people in Washington. The smaller group, a state senator has more to lose. A state assembly person is more beholden to their constituents than a guy in D.C. And there's people at your local level that you can reach to and say, look, this law will have an impact on children who are being abused right now. I want this done. And so we have lots of stuff like that you can do. And we have some inspiring stuff that's been written by or put up by people working with Protect and other, survivors. There's lots and lots of stuff out there now. I mean, that's, I think everyone's talking about it who wasn't talking about it before.
Yeah.
So there's now, there's so many books and groups and whatever. People talk about 12-step programs, and everyone who knows that if you have problems with alcohol and drugs, you can go to a 12-step program, and many people know there's like the codependent, you can go to Al-Anon. But there are programs. There is Incest Survivors Anonymous. There are programs you can go to. So when people say, I don't have any money for therapy, and obviously, yes, good therapists are very expensive, but there are programs and there are support groups all over the country for people who've been abused that are absolutely free of charge, and you can meet other people who can. And the best thing is comparing notes. The people who abused us, these perpetrators, they do not want us speaking to each other and comparing notes.
Strength in numbers.
They'll know that they tell the same lies to all their victims. These guys are all working from the same playbook. They tell the same BS stories over and over again. Oh, boo-hoo, I couldn't help it. Oh, I was sick. Oh, no, I didn't mean it. I loved you. Oh, and then they tell that to the next victim. And they're making this stuff up, and they tell the same stories. And they always tell the victim to not tell, and that they're the only one. And they've got guys they've caught who have 80, 90, 100 victims, but every single one of them tell, you're the only one.
Oh, wow.
Well, the first people to come forward about the Catholic priest, when they came forward, they were told, oh, no, we've had no other complaints. You're the first person to complain about this priest. And then they were told, we'll take care of it, but don't tell anyone else about this. Well, as soon as they did, the other people said, I was just there last week complaining about that priest. What do you mean they told you you're the first one? Oh, I was there too. Wait, the same guy? And then began to find out it was the same priest, and then it was another priest, and he had multiple victims, and they were all talking about the same couple of guys, and that they had all complained about them repeatedly. And every time another person came to complain, they were told they were the first one. By golly, we never heard this. So they don't want you comparing notes.
Well, it's institutional. Sadly, it's systemic in priesthood and religious circles and the schools and the entertainment industry. So it's important for people to share stories and compare notes.
Yeah, and people have to be cautious. I always joke about, the bank robber Willie Sutton was always quoted. They supposedly asked him, why do you rob banks? And he said, well, it's where they keep the money. Which is quite logical. I always say it's where they keep the children. You always pick up the paper and read that the swim coach or the camp counselor or the school teacher's been arrested. Right. Well, if you wake up in the morning and you say, I am a predator and I want to go attack children, I guess you need to go find where they are. You have to sign up and volunteer, get a job where you have unrestricted access to large numbers of kids. And so people like that will look for these opportunities, these kind of jobs. It's awful because you have all these nice people who want to be be swim coaches and teach people not to drown, and people who want to teach people to read. And then you have all these people who are just there because they want to sexually abuse kids.
It's so ironic and so sad, but it is true. That is what a predator is, and we shouldn't be so shocked anymore by these. But some of these things, like this teacher in Los Angeles, are beyond...
Ew,
yeah.
Right?
Oh my God. If this doesn't open eyes and make people really, really be vigilant.
Now, he got caught because he took his film to a CVS pharmacy to have his film developed, and the guy looking at the film went, what? And called the cops. Now, this guy's been doing this for years. How many rolls of film at how many drugstores did he get to develop, and the people who looked at it didn't call anybody?
That's frightening.
Now, what if he'd gotten a digital camera for his birthday? Oh, I guess he wouldn't have gone to CVS, and this would all still be going.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, stuff's coming out now. He often worked with the door locked. He was teaching, the fourth grade. Why would you lock the door? When I was in elementary school, the teachers never locked the doors.
Yeah, no. That's...
Hey,
hello, red
what
flag.
if the principal's walking down the hall? They can't come in?
Yeah, right. We need unlocked doors, at the very least.
Unlocked doors. He was locking the door, and it's like, why would you be locking the door? And then they knew this, and nobody thought this was odd. He had photographed the kids doing non-sexual things with blindfolds and putting bugs on them, and parents knew about this, and nobody went, whoa, why would you be blindfolding the kid and putting a bug on their head? Nobody questioned this and said, maybe we should look at this. And then people did complain. In 94, some girl said he fondled her. In 91, two girls said they thought he was moving his hands under the desk and he had a jar of Vaseline.
Oh, my God.
Now, easy enough to check. They could have, when they went to the school counselor could have simply walked down the hall, checked the door. No, they simply told the girls, you shouldn't make up stories. It's all in your imagination. This is after the state of California had mandated reporting laws. Mandated reporting laws were passed in the late 70s. So in the 90s, it was a law that person they spoke to was supposed to turn that information over and investigate that complaint. And they didn't.
Wow.
So how many complaints did they get? And who was this person who kept turning everyone away?
This is continuing, again, to blow the lid off of this thing in Hollywood and beyond. And it's stories like this that really, after you educate yourself and pull your head out of the sand for a while, kind of makes you want to flip around and watch an hour or two of Little House.
Right.
Put your head back in the sand.
The night shows. I mean, and that's the number of people I've talked to said they suffered abuse as kids or had a horrible childhood, and they go, but I could watch Little House on the Prairie, and I could pretend that was my family.
And how interesting that must be for you, given what you were going through as a child, and how Nellie, this little bitch on the prairie, was this outlet for you in so many ways. Can you talk a bit about that sort of dichotomy growing up of what you had gone through?
Well, I talk about this in the opening of the book. I say, people tell me how much they needed Little House and Nellie Oleson, and I say he had nowhere as much as I did. There was the thing, growing up in Hollywood, I was sexually abused from the age of 6 to about 9. I was beaten. I was certainly emotionally abused. It was horrible. It was like being in jail. And I had a very chaotic household. My parents were very interesting people. They were in show business, and my brother was a fruitcake, and they left me alone with him. And it was like, something out of the movie Tommy. And so I was already, in a very strange place mentally, but I'd already started working since I was 6.
Yeah.
And in the middle of all of this insanity and chaos, I wound up getting on Little House on the Prairie, which wound up being a terribly structured environment with all these very nice people. But then weirdly, here I was, this very shy kid, a girl who was beat up at school, beat up at home, and I get the part of Nellie, the bully, who everyone is afraid of.
How ironic.
And I knew it was ironic at the time. I went, no way, I don't believe it. Oh, man. And it was genius because it was like those animals that changed their coloring in the wild to scare predators. People were afraid of me, and I tell the stories in the book about people at school, bullies at school, go, oh, wait, you're Nellie Oleson. It's like, wait, this is going to work? And sometimes I got beaten up for being Nellie. I got clobbered at a school fair for being Nellie Oleson by fans. And then I got not beaten up at school where I was getting beat because I was Nellie Oleson. It's like, okay, this is very interesting impact. The impact on my day-to-day life was just bizarre, but it was an improvement. And then as things went on, I thought, well, this is working out really well. And And I never anticipated the show would have stuck with everybody this long. When we were making the show, we didn't. If you'd said in 2012, you'll be talking about Little House on the Prairie, they'll be watching it in other countries and on DVD. What's a DVD in the 70s? We never would have believed this. And the thing is so popular worldwide and on DVD, and people still get out. Well, so I'm still walking around having people come up to me in the street and go, "Oh, Nellie Oleson." Okay. Never would I have suspected I'd be getting recognized for this at this age.
Who would have known? And who would have known that this little winchy character would have helped you find your own power and your own voice and given you this outlet? It's so bizarre. Also, your sense of humor has given you so much perspective and levity in life. Why did you and when did you really develop your stand-up sensibilities? Was it as a child, as a young woman, this comedy as escape or healing?
I think so. I was always funny, and I did use humor as a defense mechanism and try to make people laugh and cheer them up. And I started doing stand-up when I was 15, and I had always enjoyed that. And, of course, Nellie was pretty funny, so I was always the comedy relief in general. And I had been doing that, but then when in 2002, I changed my act. I was like, well, what if I just got up and told real stories? Because, a friend of mine, a comic, had said to me once, your act's great, but those stories you tell in the bar afterwards are twice as funny as your show. And I went, he's got a point. Well, wait a minute, he's right. And I went, well, why are those stories funny, or why aren't they in my act? And I went, well, those are true stories I'm telling later. Those are actual things that actually happened to me in my life and my friends. Well, wait, that's why they're funny, because they're real. That's much funnier than anything anybody can make up. And well, what if I went out on stage and told all the really hilarious true stories, just started talking about real life? It's like, and I did. Oh man, what a hit! So I think a lot of it is the Irish. It is some of my father's deranged Irish sense of humor. The ability to find humor in absolutely anything. And as I talk about my father was in an orphanage as a child and had a very difficult childhood, and then clawed his way all the way up to Broadway and Hollywood.
Wow!
And to survive certain things, you do need a very twisted sense of humor.
And we'll enjoy even more of Alison's wonderfully twisted sense of humor in part 2 of her 2-part interview with us in late February. She serves up even more behind-the-scenes dish about Little House on the Prairie, while also sharing with us some of her groundbreaking work as an AIDS activist. So everyone, strap on your bonnet and hold on tight to this horse carriage, because, whoa, Nellie, it's going to be a wild ride. From Little House on the Prairie to the Big House in your subconscious mind, we segue now to our Dreamweaver segment with Yvonne Reba. And last week she shared with us some fascinating house dreams. She has one more of those for us. And then she talks about something called lucid dreaming, which in essence is being aware that you are dreaming within your dream and how you can learn to be an active participant in and perhaps control your dream. I'm a student of this topic, and my conversations with Yvonne are very much like a student-teacher, maybe Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'm not talking about Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. I'm talking about the very, very beginning of Star Wars. I am new to this, but fascinated by it, this other world of dreams. And Yvonne is a wellspring of knowledge. So let's journey on with her in this segment about lucid dreaming. And give me your feedback. Email me at retroality@comcast.net if you have any dreams you want Yvonne to read, to interpret. Send them along, please. And also check out Yvonne's website. That's YvonneReba.com, YvonneRyba.com. When it comes to understanding dreams, actually, I'm probably more like Princess Leia than Luke Skywalker. So in the reimagined words of the immortal Carrie Fisher, help us, Yvonne Reba. You're our only hope. So, hi there, Yvonne. How's the world treating you?
Oh, it's very well, thank you, Chris. I'm doing well.
Wonderful. Well, last week you had some fascinating dreams for us about houses in connection with our special guest, Bronson Pinchot, and his new house restoration show. This week we have Little House on the Prairie star Alison Arngrim with us. So do you have any Little House dreams for us?
Well, I have a house dream, but it's not little. It's a palace.
Well, that's a big house.
I think it'll fit in, though. I think it'll go well.
Perfect.
Yes, that's good. And by the way, I'm going to watch Bronson Pinchot when he's on the Do It Yourself network. That's definitely going to be on the list.
Oh, he's
He's
fantastic.
such a funny person.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, really. So, okay, I'm going to read my dream to you. And I'm going to tell you that this dream, I have written a date beside it, and it was in March of 1980.
Ooh, now that's very retro.
Yeah, I'll say.
Perfect.
Oh, there you go. Heavens above, 32 years ago.
Did you know all that time ago you would be doing a retro show?
No, we didn't even know about computers in 1980.
Exactly.
Not the PCs.
Such a different time.
Absolutely. Different time. We thought we were so way ahead of everything, flying all over the place.
Right. Well, thank God you had the foresight we didn't have email, but we had journals, and you recorded this in your journal, right?
I'm so glad I did this.
Yeah.
I really am. When I was doing it at the time, I used to think, well, this is interesting to look back and see what I have done over the years, but never did I think I was going to be sharing them with a load of people. Okay, so here's my dream. I'm going to read it out to you.
All right.
It was in a large, rambling palace with Scandinavian overtones, or perhaps German. And it was filled with people who were visiting, tourists who were looking around, and staff. And I owned the palace, okay? I run it and the country, although the government seems to do some kind of business side of things. But I have the last word. At least I'm supposed to have the last word.
Nice.
We're in my bedroom. My husband and I are in the bedroom together. And we're not doing anything. We're just cuddling and getting close to each other when a small person, a staff person I've written down here, appears, and he gets very arrogant and says things to me. I can't remember exactly what he says, but it's something like, I consider it very impertinent. He pops in and he has, a few words, and I'm telling him, get out. You're not supposed to be in here in the first place. And he says that he's been sent by the government. And even though I tell him to go, he refuses again. And he said he has permission to go into any place in the palace that he likes because the government said he could. And I said, if you don't get out, I'm going to have you arrested, which he wouldn't go. So I got a guard, and I told him to place this upstart, and I've got that word in quotes, so I actually used it.
Wow.
Place this upstart into a dungeon. And then I felt a little surprised when I said that because I didn't realize I had dungeons in my house. I knew. I thought, oh, I didn't know I had those. Well, I must have because it took him off anyway. And then I got some other guards, and I said, we're going to go over to the government building, right? You're taking me there. And we walked through all these people, the visitors, the tourists, all the rest of it, out of the palace, through the gardens, which are very nice, till we came to an iron railing right round the palace. It was like Hyde Park kind of thing, or something you'd get in those big, so like Central Park or in Paris or wherever, big iron railings with gold leaf on the top and fancy-looking things. Through the railings, I can see a big government building, and I intend to go over there and sort them out. That's what I've written here. But before I can get out of this thing, a sniper shoots at me.
Oh, my God.
Can't see anybody. Yes, can't see anybody. It doesn't hit me. So I'm thinking, well, I better get back into the palace before we get the guards out there and sort out whoever's shooting at me.
Right.
So we go back in. Yeah, we go back in. But I feel I should go over there and face them. I mean, that's my intention is I need to face this government. They're getting out of hand. So that was the dream, all right?
And so what does it mean?
Oh, yes. Okay, well, let's take it in bits. First of all, there's the palace. I want all buildings, especially those you inhabit, are yourself.
Yes.
It's to do with what's going on in your life at that time in your life, and it represents you.
Wow.
And palaces are rather nice. Obviously, we'd all love palaces to have one to ourselves.
Sure.
And they represent several things. One of them is palaces have lots and lots of rooms. So the more rooms, the more opportunity in your life. So this is a place of great opportunity.
Great.
And in 1980, we were thinking of moving to the United States and putting the wheels in motion. And my husband had a big business. He had to see to it, to sell the house. We had to do all sorts of things. And we didn't move for another, a year and 3/4 it was from this dream. But the thing was, I'd been on the go for nearly a year, getting things in our minds, sorting out what we were going to do. And the palace represents that. It also represents a huge energy source, right? It takes a lot of energy to keep the palace going.
Right.
And there were a lot of people there. There's all these people milling around doing stuff, and they all little parts of me represented things I was doing, right?
Oh, okay.
The the tourist was looking around and seeing, what they could. The staff was working hard, and I was a teacher. And, of course, we talk about the staff room, the staff, these are the teachers in the school. So the staff also represented my working life and so on. And my husband had a business, and when he was away, which he was at this point, he was working down in London, coming home for the weekend, and I was looking after the other part of the business that he'd left as well. And my life is full. I mean, there was no doubt about it. There's people all over the place.
Yeah.
What was school, his business, stuff that I had to do for him. I had to work. I did the taxes at that time, the VAT, value-added tax, had to be done every 3 months. I don't know what it's like now, but it was a nightmare then. And that was on everything he did. This tax had to be calculated, collected, and then given to them at the end of 3 months. They made us the tax worker, So the government probably represented that kind of thing, that I was like getting a bit ticked off with having to do so with stuff that I didn't like to do. So I was also complaining about the lack of privacy, because we never had a minute to ourselves. When he did come home, all of the family wanted to see him. His mother, his children were growing up, and they had got married at this point as well and had children. And there was like everybody, my parents, of course, and so on. It was just non-stop. We were always running around the 2 days or so we had together, talking to other people and organizing the next stage. And of course, I was teaching, and I also had, as a teacher, I was doing a lot of administration as well. I was a head of year, and that took a lot of time up too. And I did a lot of after-school things. So the palace was busy. There were people running all over it, and the government was sniping at me.
Wow. So it was sort of an assessment or a...
Oh, it was me deciding I needed to change this.
Yeah.
This was too much. And I mean, that little squirt of a guy who popped into the bedroom and announced he could be there any time he felt like it, got put in the dungeon, which was a good idea, by the way. I like that.
Right. Did you ever let him out?
I wondered about that. It could be, even though we didn't have cell phones then, we had the phone, and the phone rang a lot.
Right.
And something that interfered in the bedroom, more likely would have been the phone. Something that was intruding on our private life, that wanted to be inserted into the life, that's it. And putting it in the dungeon was like burying it,
Yes.
Getting rid of it. Like, this has got to, I am definitely going to put a boundary up here. We're not going to have this behavior, and so on and so on. So, and we did change it. We changed it.
Wow.
So it took us a while, but we got this sorted out, and we did move, and we did emigrate and come over here, and then we worked together. We were together, not every second of the day, but we were able to see each other, every day, which I wasn't getting to do when he was working in London and I was working full-time in school.
Wow.
That was our dream.
So to dream of a palace in 1980, of course, the first thing that jumps into my mind is dynasty, but that wasn't telling you that you were going to be, an heiress or have wealth, but the palace was more, as you said, like a great energy source. So
yes, and it's also a magical thing, a magical sense of like the imagination has full steam ahead here.
Right.
Anything can happen. Palaces, we've seen them on television. I have been in some palaces, visited them. They are places where the most wonderful things are collected. Paintings from the great masters, furniture created by the greatest of their age. I come from a country that has a royal family.
And if you're Candy Spelling, probably a lot of dolls and Happy Meal toys.
Well, there is, when you talk about that, there is a whole program somewhere on PBS about the Royal Dollhouse, which was built by every expert in the country, had some kind of a hand in this dollhouse for the Queen when she was a young girl and her sister, Princess Margaret. And this doll's house, which is not to do with dreams, but it would be a wonderful thing to dream about it. Everything. There were little books that were written by famous authors of the time that fit onto the tiny little library shelves, which were carved by the greatest artists of their time in the furniture field and all that kind of thing. It was just like unbelievable. It's a fabulous thing. So the palace can have anything you want.
Wow.
You can have the crown jewels in there. You can have the library with everything you want in it. You can have the most wonderful wine cellar. The kitchens will provide the most fabulous food. Everything you eat from or sit on or whatever is of the best, all that kind of feeling. So palaces are really magical. They can have anything going.
So if you want to dream about a house, don't dream about a shack. Go for the gold here, the 5-star.
Yeah. And if you do dream about a shack, you really need to look at what's going on in your life, okay? That's where you're living. It's saying, I don't think my life is doing too good. I'm living in a shack. This life needs to be upgraded. And you can do that. That's what a dream is telling you. It's about time. You may be living in a beautiful house and then dream you're living in a shack. It means you're not getting the most out of what you've got. It's not providing you with the creative urge, the happiness, the joy, the fulfillment that you need in your life. And we do need it.
So these dreams are telling you, pay attention. We're giving you some pointers here on how to change things in your life.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yes,
Very cool.
that's good.
Nice. So what about these dreams where I've heard of dreams where you can almost control what happens within the dream? Lucid dreams.
That's right, lucid dreams. Lucid dreaming, I haven't kept up on that. I don't know if they've done anything recently on it, but it's got to be 15 years or so ago that I remember a lot of talk about lucid dreaming. It was in magazines, it was all over the place, on the television and so on. This is what I know.
Yeah.
That people didn't realize that lucid dreaming, which is where you know you are dreaming as you are dreaming, and that you are able to control the dream. You can change the dream. And usually, of course, that's when you're in a place you don't like in a dream and you want to get out of it, like you're being chased by the monster. I have a little story I think I'll insert here if we have time. A lot of people have nightmares where they're being chased by something.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you don't know what it is. Other times it's a monster or a man with a knife or whatever. It's not pleasant.
Right.
And I was living in Utah at the time and had a friend who was working in a girls' home. It was a kind of girls' home where girls were sent by either the court because they were incorrigible. That meant that they could not be controlled. Or their parents decided they were uncontrollable and they sent them off. I think they had to stay at least 3 months in this place. It's like a kind of boarding type school. And my friend was one of the people looking after the girls. And she stayed some nights during the week. One of the girls had been molested, sexually molested, and then had gone out of control. And she had nightmares every night, where she woke up screaming and yelling. There was this horrible thing chasing her, was going to get a hold of her and hurt her. And she was in her teens, probably 13, 14, something like that. And nobody could do anything. I mean, they comforted her, and so she was crying and screaming, and it was just like a horrible thing that she got stuck in this thing every night. So my friend said, knowing I did dreams, and I'd already done something on the TV in Utah, on a kind of a general sort of program where they found interesting people, at least I hope I was interesting, and talked to them. And she said, what do you think? Is there anything you can do? And I said, yes, there is something, thinking of lucid dreaming. Well, I said, I don't know whether it'll work on somebody who's not really clued in on their dreams, but ask her who her hero is. Ask her, has she got a hero that would save her from this monster? And it could be Jesus Christ. It could be Superman. It could be anybody. It could be somebody she knew. Who is it? Or what is it? I said, talk to her about it and tell her that when she goes to sleep, that this hero is with her. And when the monster comes, the hero will be there and protect her, and she will have nothing to worry about. She'll jump out and do whatever it takes to get rid of the monster. And she did do that, and it worked. Actually, it worked. It did. She stopped
Really?
Yes. And I know lucid dreaming can work, and I've read a lot about it. I had actually one example myself, and it's about a house. That'll fit right in here. I was in the house, the first house I remember. Not the one I was born in, but we moved when I was 1. And it was a row house in the north of England. In this dream, I suddenly find myself at the bottom of the stairs in this 11 North View, it was called. And the stairs are dark and gloomy. And I'm looking up them and thinking, oh, that looks spooky up there. I don't know what I want to go up there. It could be somebody hiding up there. And then, knowing that I'm dreaming, this is a lucid dream, I said, but I can change that. Let that staircase be light. And of course, light appeared. And the staircase was free of anything spooky. It was very easy to see everything, and it was good.
Let there be light.
Let there be light. So I thought, oh, it works. I can do it. I'm having a lucid dream. So then I looked at the wall to my right, and I said, well, we could do with a window there. So let there be a window. And sure enough, a window appeared in the wall looking out onto a garden, a yard, if you like, with grass and so on.
Freaky.
Now, normally that would not have happened because next door it would have been their kitchen I was looking into, but in the dream anything can happen.
Sure,
so I thought, yes, it works. But then I saw this great big heap of soil, and I thought, well, that's ready for planting stuff, obviously. And I don't like the look of it just by itself, so let there be flowers all over the place. So, yes, there were flowers sprang up all over the place. Beautiful. It was really great. And then I got, bored, and I thought, okay, now I know I can do it. It's great.
Yeah.
I don't know I want to do this again, but it's fine. And I woke up, and I wrote it down, and I thought, it's very good, and I can see where it could be useful in certain circumstances. but I don't want to do this every night. I want my adventures. I want my imagination to go out there and provide me with palaces and all sorts of adventures and things, and let me learn from that. I don't want to be in control. In other words, I don't want to be given my imagination the script. I want my imagination to write the script, and that's pretty much where I am with that.
Right, because they say that, and you have said, that dreams are our subconscious mind, of course, telling us things deep within that we either block out or are unaware of, etc., in our conscious mind. So how much do you really want to be conscious within that dream world to change the script of a message?
Absolutely. Isn't that boring? Like,
right.
Tonight I'm going to dream about so-and-so. Now, that's okay if you want to do the controlling of the dream, and it's a nightmare that you can do without.
Right.
And one of the things they did find about lucid dreaming, well, first of all, they found that they could get people to wake up and tell them the dream. They did research on it, and they found that they could say to them, now, when you start to lucid dream, move your eyes left to right very quickly so many times or whatever, gave a signal, and we'll wake you up. And they did, and they found that everybody was having this lucid dream, and they were able to relate it back because they knew they were dreaming and they could give the signal.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Now, the people that they helped with lucid dreaming were those people who had phobias. So I had inadvertently done that. I had told the girl to find a hero and let him save her. Okay, or her save her. It could have been Joan of Arc or anybody.
Right.
Well, I read how people with phobias were using lucid dreaming to help them get through the phobia. And this woman, who'd had a terrible time with the phobia about bugs, insects, okay? And this comes from the book, which I have mentioned ages ago, Our Dreaming Mind by Robert L. Van de Castle, who is fabulous. This fabulous book.
Is that last name Castle?
Yes, Castle.
Perfect.
Yes, goes right in there, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, this woman had this terrible fear of bugs, especially roaches and things. She had a lucid dream where she decided to talk to the bugs, and she made herself into an insect, and she shrank herself down smaller than a roach and had a conversation with this bug in her dream.
Wow.
And she saw the world through the bug's eyes, how bugs looked to each other and what they were doing. And she had a very good conversation, an in-depth type of thing. And when she woke up, she had lost her fear of the bug.
Really?
And and it stayed with her. She did not have that phobia. She had worked through it in this lucid dream.
So she worked through that in lucid dreaming.
She worked through it in the lucid dream, by talking to this roach that answered back, by the way, and gave her quite a long conversation. She was able to see what it was like to be an insect and not to be frightened of it.
Interesting. It really is. So it's really disturbing dreams or repetitive dreams that play on your fears. Those might be the most helpful instances to employ lucid dreaming, where you can say, hey, wait a minute, I'm taking some control here.
Yes, that's right. Now, some people had a problem getting into being able to be a lucid dreamer. I mean, I must have dreamed so much in my life, but I didn't have a problem. But for those who did, there were all sorts of gadgets to help them. Now, like I said, I have not kept up with this, and you could easily find out on the internet what's going, but they used to have a special light that you had by the bed or whatever, or there was some kind of thing you put over your eyes, and it shone different, not bright light. I'm not sure if they were sort of dark blues or something like that. They sort of like were supposed to put you in that state where lucid dreaming was much more probable. But people who are easily hypnotized were found to be the best people for that kind of thing,
So are there books, plenty of resources that people can look into to sort of get an idea of how to do this?
Yes. There are many books on dreaming all over the place. Now, lucid dreaming, like I said, I have not kept up on what's going on at the moment, but I'm quite sure that there's plenty out there. You just have to Google it or whatever, and you'd find what you need. But the main thing is the desire to do it. I found that for me. I want to be in control of a dream to see how it feels. And it feels okay, but it was boring after a while for me.
Right.
However, that's not to say that other people can't enjoy being in control of some drama that they want to be like, the producer and the director and the writer and everything all in one go.
Right.
That's fine.
And if it emboldens people in their waking life to take control of a situation that they need to take control of, then it can be instructive in that way.
Yes, it can.
Wow.
That's a good way to go, Dreams are wonderful things. They really are. We have only just started in the last century, really, to see dreams. I mean, it has been noted since, many thousands of years. People have known dreams had meanings. They just didn't know what whether they came from the gods or what were they? You know?
Right.
They had many different ideas behind it, but now, well, I honestly believe that dreams are there for a start. They're there to help us in our lives, to sort out things, to give us warnings or advice or meaning to what's going on, telling us things that we hadn't quite thought of, or leading us to a specific place that will give us the greatest joy, that kind of thing. But there are also a spiritual message. They're our connection to spirit, and if we're open to it, it will come through and help.
So that spiritual dimension we've touched on before, and I'd love to continue to touch on it, because I really feel that, especially for people that maybe are finding their way in life and finding their belief system and want to know if there's a hereafter or a creator or whatever, to me, dreams are sort of a nice entry point, because that is really proof that I think we all have on some level, that there is something else out there. There's a greater dimension that we tap into when we're asleep. So it's limitless, the information, I think, that is there for us to learn.
Yes, absolutely, Chris. You're very right. And I mean, look, I have a dream here that I tell tonight from 1980. And I was recording dreams before that. I have used them to help me to do the right thing for me, you know, find the right place to live, the right person to live with, okay, who you're going to spend your life with.
Right.
All these things that come to us, to find the right job or leave the job you're in because there's something better that's showing up. Dreams can help you with all of this, and they can warn you, like we said, you know. They can warn you not to get on the Titanic and not to go, you know, to the Twin Towers that day, because some people had dreams about that and so on. All this kind of thing. Yes, it's definitely a connection to something beyond our basic human knowledge. You know, that sort of you have to see it and feel it to know that it's there.
Right.
So you can't see and feel dreams, but you know there's something going on. You have that feeling. That's what you count on, the feeling behind the dream. That will tell you whether it's very important or not. Some dreams are not that important. They might be just about a small thing.
Right.
Big dreams are colorful, intense, and the feeling connected to them is unmistakable. It is important. It tells you, pay attention. I'm trying to tell you something.
And whether you explore lucid dreaming and trying to have some control over the dream itself, we can all at least start to pay attention to our dreams and use those messages to have a little bit more control over our conscious waking life. Is that fair to say?
And write them down. Yes,
Yeah.
Write them down, because that's how you forget. I couldn't remember that dream for 30-some years. I remember some dreams vividly. That dream was not... That was like, what's going on in my life? I need to get rid of some of this clutter. I want more privacy. I want more control. I'm supposed to be in control here of this palace. But somebody over the other side there in the government building is firing shots at me.
Get the government out of my house. That's a political dream.
Yes, that's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's always delightful to talk to you, and insightful. Delightful and insightful. And we appreciate your time. And thank God you kept all of these journals going back into the 80s at least. And, you know, that's a retro trip for us.
Oh, thank you. There's a great sense of fun doing it, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to chatting with you again soon then.
Thank you, Chris. Me too. I look forward to it.
Reimagine That with Chris Mann was brought to you by Retroality TV. Copyright 2012 by Chris Mann. You can find us at retroality.tv and at reimaginethat.libsyn.com. Tweet us at retroalitytv or join us on Facebook at facebook.com/retroalitytv. And don't forget to check out our TV channel at youtube.com/retroalitytv. And let's not forget that it always pays to be nice. Otherwise, as Nellie Oleson found out the hard way, you may find yourself rolling down the rocky ravine of life on the wooden wheelchair of your own karma.